Hello, True North team. This is Christoph with Kaiserworks. I'm going to present our preliminary design for the church on 9th and McKinley and some of the surrounding properties. I'll be doing this by way of showing some existing images and then overlaying design sketches on top of those images. Later, some of these images will become renderings of the project as we develop this further in the next round with input from you. We're looking right now at what we see as sort of the nucleus or the hub of this project. We realize there's other properties involved, but the church itself and what we're calling the yard directly north of the church is what we're seeing as the hub or the heart of the project. In this first sketch that I'm showing, there's a few major design moves that I'd like to talk about. One of them being this large opening that we're proposing on the north side of the church. We feel that there needs to be a very strong connection made generally between inside and outside, but secondarily between the primary space on the main floor as well as the basement level and this yard on the north side of the building. We want to do this with a large move where there's visual connectivity between the two and where there's an obvious draw. When you're in one space, you're drawn to the other and vice versa. We feel that's important for this for the interior space especially to work successfully, and especially the lower floor of that interior space. So that's big move number one in this scene that we're looking at. Number two is this wrapper of green vegetation. We're seeing a green wall that wraps and brackets this pocket park, and this is a scene that we're seeing a bit of a mixture of a beer garden and just an outdoor dining / cafe area. We need this because of where we live to be very cool. We see this wall as something that introduces moisture to the air, so this is something that's emitting mist or fog as well as being an edible wall. So it's a vertical green growing surface that would most likely have things grown here that are used directly in what's being offered to patrons that come here. In the center of the space, we're showing these large shade trees. We're going to show you two different options of what the central feature could be. One of these options is these dramatic large shade trees. We've been calling internally the Keebler elf tree, something that would need to be monumental to command the scale of the space that we're talking about. And we'll be looking at some plans later, but we're showing here a grouping of chairs that are nestled beneath of that large tree, and in the foreground we're showing vegetation that's used as a visual barrier between the street just to the west and then the patron seating area. The second sketch is an idea of a shade sculpture. We're showing here this cloud sculpture that floats above. These would be this white sort of abstract cloud sculpture that would also be a fogging system. So we're seeing these as clouds that will always be there, clouds that will always provide shade, and clouds that will provide moisture, rain, if you will, on command. And we're seeing this as this could be a very beautiful sculptural element that's a draw for people to come and check out. Uplighting these at night would also create a very nice indirect light for the evening hours for patrons. Internal to the church, we're seeing if there was a marriage between Lux Coffee, I'm sure most of us have been to Lux Coffee, and Dean and DeLuca. So we're seeing a coffee shop that is also has alcoholic beverages, also has you can order things to eat as well, and then there's a deli component where you can go and buy a block of cheese and salad and pick up a baguette to take home and make dinner for yourself. So these two being inserted into the first and second floor potentially of the church is something that we feel would meld very well with the neighborhood. These two images speak specifically to the yard and how we see the yard. The look and feel of the yard, again, is something that it needs to be a cool, moist, green environment where people will want to hang out even in the summertime. This is on the right here. This is Paley Park in New York, a very successful pocket park that does just that. It has this wall of water, which we had also talked about that as one option. Is this a wrapping wall of continuously falling water? From an engineering standpoint, a little bit more costly to work that out. On the left image here is this edible herb wall which in our case would be slightly taller than this, and it wraps two sides, and it also tapers down. It sort of follows that existing stairwell. What I didn't explain previously is there's a garage here in the foreground that's existing, and we're proposing that goes away to create enough depth and to also create a nice scale of private outdoor space for this yard area. I'm going to move now to the south, to this lot that we have here on the southeast corner of 9th and McKinley. This first sketch that I'll be showing here is a cafe in the form of a silo. So this was the first thing that we sort of investigated, completing this corner of the block with a cafe component that would, the two of these acting together as sort of bookends to this piece of McKinley heading towards the east, deeper into the neighborhood. After investigating this and also working on what is the program here, we've pulled away from this a little bit and have gone to what we think is going to be much more palatable to the neighborhood association as well as to historic preservation, and that is something that's not a commercial entity. We actually think that there'd be quite a bit of pushback to put a commercial entity on what is established very powerfully as existing residential. To have this sort of commercial abutting this sort of residential directly is something that we think would be a tough sell, and we're also not quite sure if it's a fit. So formally this could be the answer, and we talked about this potentially being an Airbnb, potentially a slightly larger version of this being an Airbnb. But a thought that we keep coming back to is basically complete the six-pack is what we're calling it. We have 5 existing houses here. There's architectural similarity between these two, and so the thought is to potentially just complete the six-pack. You build another form that is, you might say, the showcase model of these. So there's things about these that are not done very well, but if you can build one that has beautifully selected windows and doors, beautifully detailed, and just take the quality finish level of the finishes up a level, and then potentially introduce a higher density by proposing something of a second floor architectural move that adds a unit to the top floor of each of these. And we were seeing these as the sort of modern move. So everything on the ground level is historic, or at least it's in harmony with that historic architecture, and it's the second floor move. We're seeing these as, we call them the sugar cubes, but these are these ephemeral, potentially fabric wrapped Airbnb units that provide a very different kind of experience. The first floor being the history of the place, the second floor being these modern insertions that have been dropped from the sky onto the roof, and they provide views to the skyline of the Phoenix, and they are this sort of lantern that sits on top of the existing. In this aerial sketch, I'll just kind of talk us through the rest of the sketch. Here we're showing the version of the cloud sculpture in this pocket park move on the north end of the church. And then just beyond the church, and I'll be talking about these in plan, we're seeing, what we're proposing here is a small restaurant. We're seeing something like Nobu. I would love for there to be a ramen, just a really great Japanese ramen bar somewhere in this neighborhood. So that's kind of what we're envisioning for this location here. Here we have our boutique Airbnb hotel, and then the first floor of that building, a portion of it, as you'll see in the plan, is also Airbnb hotel, with the back half acting as a commissary kitchen that feeds primarily this again, coffee shop, Dean and DeLuca, Lux Coffee meets Dean and DeLuca concept for this main space. In this sketch here, we were running for a little bit with the idea of this being a wellness center. This is a spa where you can get a massage. It's also a boutique hotel. But in looking at parking calculations, I think parking is going to be one of our major challenges for this project. And so a large portion of this property, if it can be acquired, I think would need to go to parking. Given the fact that it's an adjacent lot, it would lend itself very nicely to a cross-access parking agreement. Moving now to the plan, I'm first going to show us a site plan. This is 9th Street running along the bottom with East McKinley just here in the center. Here we have our six-pack with 2-story Airbnb units. And what we're showing here is the existing church. We're proposing a rebuilt elevator here that would serve both floors. So this becomes not the store-bought, very utilitarian one-level elevator, ADA elevator that is today. We're seeing this a bit of as a jewel box. This might be just a beautiful glass lantern that sits on the back. So basically upgrading it and also giving it the ability to bring people to the lower floor as well as going to the upper floor. Here we have our patio or yard on this side, and it's represented here as a very thin line, but this is our wrapping green wall that brackets this space. And then our existing volume just to the east of that, we're showing cold storage, commissary kitchen, trash. This would be a way of managing trash for the entire site where this door could be opened. You pull these dumpsters into the alley for service. This is a solution we've used on other projects. And then here's the first floor of the Airbnb hotel. Here, this existing house, we're showing these intimate booths running along the east side with a bar. This is a very intimate restaurant. We feel it's a very good size for this scale of restaurant, and then using this northern wing as the kitchen that is dedicated to the ramen shop. And again, we're calling it a ramen shop because it helps us dream, but that could of course be many different things, many different kinds of restaurants. Here we're looking at a zoom in of what we're calling concept one. There's two concepts for the church that are similar to each other. One concept, or concept one, is more difficult to park. So, and we'll get into the parking calculations when we meet in person. But this concept is more challenging to park. And what it is essentially is we're taking the same program and we're dividing it between the first and the second floor. The only difference is on the first floor, as you walk into that main level, we're seeing this as coffee deli. This is where you go and you get just an amazing sandwich or a tuna salad, and you grab your coffee and you can come into this lounge area that is situated beneath these just beautiful, massive wood trusses above you. The scale of this space would be the draw of the space and also the history of the space. So we have this central lounge seating area, and then we have a large community table on the south end, and then marching sort of between the windows on the east side, we have additional tables. And then at the north end of the space, we're seeing this fairly dramatic move where there's a great introduction of natural light into the space by way of this large glass opening. Flanking that on either side is additional bar seating. So this is where you kind of hunker with your laptop and you watch people passing by and get some work done and have a coffee. Going downstairs, we're using the downstairs for the bathrooms and storage. We're calling these the saddlebags. We're thinking you pack the program that you really don't want to deal with in a space like this, but you pack them on the side of your vertical circulation. And then to the south of that, we have very much the same of what's going on the first floor. This is more of a cozy, perhaps darker realm, and we're seeing this as the evening spot. This is the wine bar. But very much otherwise is a parallel of what's going on the first floor. Concept two is slightly different in that we, on the main level, we deal with what is essentially provided on concept one on two levels. So this becomes a more symmetrical layout of program where on one side of the room you have coffee deli, on the other side of the room you have wine bar and deli. And in the central area you have this grouping of tables, and then at the entry down here, this could be similar to what you see at Le Grand LGO, where this is grocery / merchandise, where you can come here and buy a bottle of wine and some cheese, crackers, and take that back home. This program, depending on what we learn with, as we march forward with the city, and also as we march forward with demographic studies and what people in the neighborhood would like to see, this could grow or shrink. This component could grow or shrink. On the the basement level of that same plan, we have the lounge seating. Again, so this is basically what we have on concept one minus the wine bar component. That actually does quite a bit for us from a parking standpoint. We save a lot on parking requirements by not having the wine bar on this first floor. So that is our preliminary design presentation, and we look forward to talking about this with you in person and hearing your feedback on these things. Thank you.